The opinions expressed in the following program are not necessarily those of Eastlink Community TV, its sponsors, or partners.
Welcome back to another episode of the Unlikely Innovators. I'm Mike Commito, joined by Steve Gravel, and this is the show where we look at guests and people from all over Northern Ontario, the unlikely journeys they've had, oftentimes circuitous and winding, but always innovative. Today we're super pleased to be joined by Waubgeshig Rice. He's a Sudbury-based author originally from Waubgeshig First Nation on Georgian Bay. His most recent book is Moon of the Turning Leaves, the sequel to his breakout novel, Moon of the Crusted Snow. Wab, thanks so much for being here. We're super excited to talk to you.
Super excited to talk to you guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, our pleasure. The first question I wanted to ask you, because I think, and this is a question that's near and dear to me, is it's often unlikely for somebody to be able to leave their day job and write books, full time for a living. Can you maybe talk about taking the plunge and, if there was any nerves around that? And also the second question that I have that I really want to ask you is it everything you thought it would be and more?
Oh man, there's definitely lots of nerves there. I was working here at CBC in Sudbury as the host of the afternoon show, which is like a coveted job internally at CBC, right? And it was the best job I had within my whole time at CBC too, the 14 years altogether. So yeah, it was scary. It was a bit nerve-wracking, but it wasn't spontaneous at all. When the opportunity first started coming up, or the potential to leave first started coming up, it was about 6 months before I actually did. So I had a lot of time to talk to my wife about it, and she's always been hugely encouraging. She's always said, if you have the chance to quit your day job and go write, just go for it, eh? So, we spent all that time, looking at, various income streams for me, to make up for that CBC income that was gonna be gone entirely. But it was hugely thrilling at the same time. It was like, here's my shot to live the dream essentially, and be a full-time writer, and all I can do is my best, right? And fortunately it has worked out up until this point, and yeah, it's everything I hoped it would be, and maybe a little bit more. I wasn't sure exactly how it would unfold, because I also quit at the very start of the pandemic, where the world was in such turmoil. But I think that steeled the resolve too to do it. Yeah. It's like, okay, here's my chance to focus on this story and focus on my family and think about a future when our real life future was just so up in the air, right? So yeah, I just feel so fortunate that everything aligned to make the leap and to keep it going. And I fully recognize it may not always be that way. There may be a time where I have to, I don't know, go back to a desk or go back to a 9-to-5 or something like that. But I'm going to make the most of it while I can and just, be grateful.
Yeah, and I think there's a very nervous Chantal Commito at home now, because that was a ringing endorsement of quitting one's job and then becoming a full-time author, which I know is a dream of yours.
It is a dream, but
while
you
this
met
is
my
a
wife,
Cambrian
and I
College
think
podcast,
that'd be a very long-standing debate.
She's definitely shifting her weight from foot to foot at home right now. Hopefully she's watching.
Hopefully, yeah.
Or hopefully not, maybe for your case. Yeah. Maybe she hasn't tuned in yet. I want to talk a little bit about the book genre that you've sort of chosen, because I've always been fascinated with the apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic world genre, and I think it sort of mimics how the world is going sometimes, right? The more and more apocalyptic genre works come out when things aren't going so well in the world. And I think one of the things that you added, and I did a bit of research, is I don't think that the Indigenous voice has ever been looked at through that lens. Can you talk about how meaningful it was for you to tell that sort of similar story, but with the Indigenous sort of lens and lived experience brought into it, because you don't see that in any of the genre?
Yeah, it's not hugely present at all in the so-called canon, I guess you could call it, right, of post-apocalyptic and dystopian literature. I think a lot of it comes from the lived experience for sure, and being a fan of the genre since my teenage years. You know, a lot of us in high school read 1984, Brave New World, Fahrenheit 451, and all that, right? And those were hugely inspirational stories for me, or influential stories, because I really appreciated the opportunity to look at a potential future. And all those stories are grim though, right? Like, it's like, you know, here's the path we're heading on if we don't, you know, right the ship, which is important for all of us to think of for sure. And we headed down that path a little bit with the pandemic, and arguably we're still on that path in many ways, right? But when I made the decision to sort of explore Moon of the Crusted Snow, you know, about a decade ago or more, you know, I recognized like the genre that it would be placed on the shelf, but I didn't want it to be grim, you know, and just thinking of my own community's history, my family's history, and so on, it's a story of surviving several devastating, genocidal, hugely detrimental moments in Canadian history. But, you know, the upbringing I was fortunate to have was one of, you know, hope and determination and reclamation and so on. So I kind of wanted to bring that perspective to Moon of the Crusted Snow when I first, you know, jumped into it. And also, like, even though there aren't many Indigenous books in that genre, you know, there were still some that were really influential, like the Marrow Thieves by Cherie Dimaline and Future Home of the Living God by Louise Erdrich. But you know, I wasn't really thinking of this bigger picture discussion around the story when I was writing it. It was just something fun that I wanted to do, you know? I was really excited about the story, and I had a lot of fun writing it. And I thought wherever it ends up, if only just a few people read it, that's awesome. That's my sort of ceiling for accomplishment, right? It's just getting it published and having a few people read it. And I never imagined how it would take off to the point where I was able to quit my day job, you know? But again, yeah, it's exciting, and again, hugely fortunate.
Because were you still working on that book when you were at CBC?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I wrote pretty much all of it when I was living in Ottawa still. So I was a TV reporter there, and yeah, I would get up early in the morning to work on it, because at the end of the day, after doing a TV story, I just totally gassed out, right? Creatively. I just want to sit on the couch and watch TV when I got home, right? So I'd get up early and work on it then, and then, you know, however many hours I could carve out on the weekend. And this was before kids too. Yeah. You know? So my life is totally different now. But yeah, I wrote it while I was working at CBC, and then it came out while I was here, you know, a few years later, and I was already hosting up north by that point. So it was like a little complicated, you know, both personally and professionally, to have those things happening at the same time. But yeah, it was just a matter of like being dedicated to it and finding the time.
Yeah, it's important to make it a ritual almost.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and you know, like, I don't like forcing it. I think creatively, that passion is something you have to nurture and really see in a positive light. So it's not like, oh, I got to get up and write and, you know, pound out some words. It's like, you know, I gave myself some leniency here and there too. But again, making the time and space available too was important.
Yeah, we're going to head to a break right now, but we're going to talk more with Waub Rice when we come back.
All right, so we're back with Waub Rice. Waub, we wanted to ask you, you know, obviously as an author and as an artist, you know, you have your vision for how you want to write something. How do you balance that with knowing that, you know, you're beholden to a publisher as well? You've got to do something that's going to obviously have commercial appeal. Like, how do you kind of straddle that line to make sure that you stick true to your vision, but also know that at the end of the day, we're in a business where we're trying to sell books?
Yeah, that's a really important topic to bring up, and I think the key is having ongoing conversations with your editor, your publisher, just making sure you're all as transparent as possible about what your objectives are for the project, for writing it, for marketing it, for selling it, etc., right? And I've been so lucky on my writing journey to work with really great publishers and editors. You know, my first two books came out through a very small independent Indigenous publisher. And then Moon of the Crescent Snow was with a slightly bigger, I guess, kind of mainstream independent publisher, right? But my editor of that book, Susan Renouf, she was just so great in terms of like honoring the vision I had in terms of telling an Anishinaabe story, because there's so many very specific cultural elements in there, right? And you know, she's a white woman from Toronto in her 60s, you know, an experience pretty detached from mine growing up on the res. But she just has such care and consideration for the material that she said, you know, I'm here just to make it a better piece of literature, you know, to help improve the writing. I don't have the experiences you have in terms of growing up on the res or being culturally Anishinaabe or whatever else. So I'm going to leave those alone, and I will help you try to strengthen those elements of the story. So it was a really hands-on, communicative, open discussion in terms of that editorial process, which was great. And in that sense, like, I think it trickles, I guess, down and expands upward to the other people within the publishing industry, you know, whether it's internally within the publisher or in the literature media or wherever else, right? And, you know, I was able to carry that through to Muna the Turning Leaves as well, with a totally different publisher, different editor, just having those discussions. So, like, yeah, there are things that, you know, you have to be mindful of. It's like, okay, as I mentioned earlier, I knew it was going to go on the shelf next to, like, whatever other post-apocalyptic books there are. But I had my own objectives, and you know, it comes from my own intentions as a guy from the res who wants to write about Anishinaabe things. And I'm able to convey those things, you know, through interviews, in media, on social media, and whatever else, right? And I think it becomes really clear where I'm coming from and what the story is supposed to be. And that can, like, start to transcend some tropes or stereotypes about the genre itself too, you know, and I think it broadens the discussion, and I think makes it a more wholesome kind of approach to storytelling, which, you know, I've been very fortunate to be a part of.
Yeah, and I want to pick up on something in there, because your books have been bestsellers. That's you know, you could think about that as like, that's the sort of like that's the goal. But I want to think about, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about some of the most meaningful feedback you've received on the work that maybe sort of transcends where it is on a bestsellers list, more of, you know, I knew I did a good job when this person said X.
Oh yeah.
Did you have a moment like that?
Oh yeah, man, that's exactly it. When I hear from people who say that it hits home for them, that's better than any sort of acclaim. I mean, being a bestseller obviously helps pay the bills and all that, right? But when people say that, you know, they felt represented or reflected, or they felt connected to the story, that means the most. And it's the everyday readers, like, and essentially these are the people buying the copies and you know, helping you pay the bills and so on. So obviously, like, on a very personal level, hearing from Anishinaabe people who say that means a lot, for sure. When they say, you know, like, I felt like I was with family or with community when I was in the pages of your book, like, that's amazing, you know, and that's exactly what I wanted to do. But I think finding home is, you can interpret that however many ways you want, right? Like, I hear from non-Indigenous people from Northern Ontario who say, oh, I recognize that place you're writing about. Or even who say, I felt like home too, just in the dialogue between the characters, or the, you know, reading about the relationships and so on, right? And of course, you know, that can hopefully transcend geography or urbanity or whatever else too, because I think the most important job of an author is to evoke empathy, is to make those human connections. So, you know, starting on a very micro level, yeah, hearing from other people like me is great, but then hearing from people who aren't like me at all, who make that human connection, means the most too.
I wanted to ask you before we got to break, just because you alluded to this earlier, that obviously, you know, different ways of approaching your work, you know, before you had kids and a family, to now finding time to sit down and write, knowing that it's your full-time job. What's the process like for you these days? Are you getting inspiration anywhere and then you get home and then the words just kind of flow? How does the process work for you?
Oh yeah, I think it's inspiration anywhere, basically. Yeah. It's, you know, how I decide whether to commit to something is if I'm still thinking about it days later. Yeah. Like, if there's this moment I have either with my kids or with somebody else in community, or if there's something I witness, if I'm still thinking about that like a week later and thinking about ways that I can expand it into something, then yeah, that's when I'll sit down and like start making some notes. and maybe think about ways to research it, or broaden the discussion within my family or friends or whatever else, right? So yeah, it could be anything, and that's the privilege I have of being able to go home and sit down and try to develop that on my own.
That's what I find the most fascinating when I hear writers talk about their process, is just the things that you see during the day that ends up being 2 or 3 pages, or a conversation, the way someone said something is now, that's really emblematic of how this character would say that. I find that so fascinating and a real talent that I'll never have. But is that really as straightforward as it is? It's like you sort of, a patchwork of your experiences sort of make up how characters act. Is that how you sort of view it?
Yeah, I think so, and I would disagree with you. I think anybody can do it.
Oh yeah.
I think you could do it for sure. And it really is about making that human connection. Like Mike, as you write, whatever it is you're working on, you're looking to connect with readers, right? And it's just finding those human moments, really, and really trying to emphasize them and really, foster community essentially.
Right. Yeah, and I think as we head to break, we're really going to try and, to the extent you can, talk about what's next for you and what projects you have upcoming. So we'll be right back with Waubgeshig Rice. All right, we're back more with Waubgeshig Rice. Particularly when we have creative people on, we always like to ask sort of like what's next for in this case, Waubgeshig Rice. What sort of projects are you working on now? We always think that like TV deals, maybe I think this, TV deals of licensing of books are like the ultimate, but I mean that's not always the case. But so what do you have going on now and then in the future? Yeah,
I got some writing on the go, some book projects. I have a new novel that's in the revision process. I just submitted a first draft at the end of the spring. So working with my editor to I think they want to get it out next fall of 2026. But it's a total departure from the last 2 books. Okay. It's a standalone novel that I hope will be a little more comedic. Like that's the goal, and
less heavy.
Yeah, less heavy. Exactly. Nobody dies.
Yeah. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert. Yeah. But like that's actually really scary because comedy is just so subjective, and
that's terrifying.
It's sort of my attempt to write a humorous novel. So, very brief synopsis. It's sort of a day in the life of a res in Northern Ontario before a big bingo jackpot. Okay. And there's rumors swirling about the demise of this bingo palace. So it's all like conjecture and rumors going around all day long. So, so anybody in a small community can relate with that. Yeah. And I consider Sudbury small enough where conjecture kind of rules a lot around here, So yeah, that's the novel I'm working on. I got a kids book coming out in the winter of 2027 that is also in revisions. And then I'm under contract for a nonfiction book too with Random House. That'll be more or less an essay collection, I think. And I'll probably be starting on that sometime this fall too. But I'm also in school. I'm going to Georgian College for their Anishinaabe program. Okay. So I'm going into my 2nd year there, and just really excited to keep my language journey going too.
That's fantastic, and I think like busy guy. Then obviously that's a lot. That's a lot on the go.
Yeah, and it's just like I think again the privilege I have of that 9 to 4 window every day. You can pack a lot in there after. I'm 46 now, right? So I've been at it for a lot of years, and in time management, you learn, especially as a journalist. So I'm sort of utilizing the best of those skills to like pack as much into that window as I can before I have to go get the kids from daycare, right?
Yeah. There's a finite end.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mike's going to ask you a question now.
No, I'm not. I wanted to ask a different one first.
Okay. Because my eyes roll over.
No. I think I know what's coming.
Your eyes will roll over later, but before, we still have some time with Bob, so I wanted to ask you.
Fair enough.
Because as a professionally trained journalist, obviously you're dealing with your reporting with like real life events. We're talking about nonfiction. And then you go into fiction with the 2 books that we've been talking about a little bit today. Was that daunting for you? Because I'll share this, and your eyes will probably roll back in your head, that I write nonfiction and I read fiction, but I always feel like I can't jump from nonfiction to fiction. To me, it just seems like that is too. I would like to do it. I think it's on my bucket list, but I just feel like I would be bad at it. Like, was it scary getting into fiction? Because I just feel like that's it just feels so alien to me
Foreign,
versus like the work that I've been doing. But I know that it's something that maybe at some point, if I get an idea, I might scratch it, but I'm not there yet.
I think you definitely should. Yeah, it's scary, but it's not so much like the format or the sort of vibe. It's more like, I think, the artistic weight that gets put on fiction.
Yeah.
You know, it's held in such high regard, undeservedly, in my opinion. You know,
Right.
Because like traditionally, for a long time, historically, the people who got published were like connected to master's programs at universities, and we're either in Toronto or Montreal, right? But fortunately now, in the modern context, we're getting more stories from outside of the big cities, from people who don't have traditionally literature paths, So I think I was inspired by a lot of people who did that, who sort of went off the beaten path and got published. I think from a content and context perspective, I think I was empowered or maybe emboldened to write fiction because of the nonfiction. Yeah. When you're working as a journalist and you spend so much time with real people every day telling you their real stories, that's a front row seat to the human experience,
Yeah.
And I think when you sit down to make up stories, that comes through you regardless, right? And it's not like taking elements of real stories that people have shared with you. It's like understanding that human reaction that they have and being able to write about that. So even like the history you're researching, like there'll be a nugget you pick up on and you're like, okay, and I don't want to like diminish fiction to this, but a lot of it is like taking real moments and just changing them and embellishing them to make them a different kind of interesting story,
Yeah.
So I think that's where the switch can happen.
Yeah.
What I always basically say is like working as a journalist, the most important part of your job is making real people care about real people because you're the conduit, right? And in fiction, you're trying to make real people care about made up people, which is both harder and easier depending on the context of the story, right? So I think it's making the leap is maybe a little easier than what we've been led to believe, right?
Yeah.
Like it looks daunting, but I think again it's just keeping that human element in mind.
Yeah. Okay, well, if I ever write a hockey horror book, it'll be because of this interview.
Man, that's not
that's
a bad
where I
word.
would like to go. I
That's
don't
not
have an
that
idea.
bad.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
That's pretty good.
We can workshop it.
I think maintaining the realism. I'd always have imposter syndrome about that.
Yeah.
Like trying to make it real, right? Make it seem real. Yeah.
But this is now where your eyes will roll.
He doesn't honestly, he doesn't let me say these ones because he says that my eyes look dead if I say them because I'm not providing meaning. I'm not a huge hockey Leafs fan.
Yeah.
So please, without further ado.
Well, yeah, I think by the time this episode airs at some point, the Leafs will be in the 2025-26 season. I know you're a Leafs fan, and even in Moon of the Crusted Snow, there's a reference to the Leafs. So even in a post-apocalyptic world, we cannot escape the Leafs. They're always there, even when the world is ending.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts going into this season, knowing that by the time this airs, they're going to be playing, and maybe you'll be proven right, or maybe we're both way off the mark. What's your vibe going into this upcoming season with all the changes that have happened over the offseason?
Oh man, this is the question I was dreading the most about this interview, to be honest. Well, I was very disappointed about the Marner situation. Very sad to see him go. It's a huge hole to fill. So my expectations are lower, to be honest. I don't think they'll miss the playoffs or anything. They'll still be in the mix. I don't think they'll win the division, regular season division title, but we'll see. Happy to be proven wrong. The way I look at it now is that they have, I think, elevated the coaching, and Berube, he took a mixed bag of players all the way to Stanley Cup championship with St. Louis, right?
Yeah.
So, if there's anybody who can make the adjustments, I think it's probably him. So when this airs, I'm hoping the Leafs are near the top of their division, But yeah, having Tavares still in the mix is great. Still have William Nylander, who's a world-class player, who I think was overlooked or overshadowed by Marner a lot. Mostly the drama around Marner too. So And again, we still have Austin Matthews, right? Arguably the second best player in the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, can't help but remain hopeful. And like, even after the end of the world, I'll still be thinking about the Leafs no matter what's going on.
That's something good to take away from this. Even after the end of the world, that still can't change the heart of the Leafs fans.
Yeah. It's all like, even, end of the world, like maybe this is the year.
Yeah.
Now that the world has ended.
The arena has gone silent.
Exactly.
But still, we care about the Leafs.
What are your thoughts?
I've been really trying to talk myself into this idea that addition by subtraction, that he was obviously not content where things were going, and maybe he just needs his own change of scenery, and I hope he does well, because again, I enjoyed watching him. But I don't know if that's just me trying to like pump myself up for the season, because like to your point, like you're going to miss a 100-point player, so I don't think regular season wise they've got enough firepower that they'll still get to the playoffs. It's like, do those pieces they added, is that what they needed in the playoffs? And maybe that's what'll happen. That's what I'm hoping happens, that he hadn't really turned up in the playoffs over those years. Injuries and all these other things are always a wild card, because again, they can get into the playoffs and the guys they picked up could add that value. But if somebody gets hurt, like
their goalie could get hit in the head.
Well, exactly. So I mean, it's such a long season. So I'm at the point now where I've shaken off like the disappointment from the defeat, and I'm ready to get hurt all over again.
Yeah, exactly.
That's been the Leafs podcast. No, I think I blacked out there for a second, but I appreciate
we're
you
gonna
guys.
make you a Leafs fan pretty soon.
Well, I almost inevitably I have to be associated with this, but Wob, it was so good of you to come and join us and tell us about your journey and some of the works you've had on the go. You've had great success. We wish you much more, but it was great to have you on the Unlikely Innovators.
Oh, Steve and Mike, this is so fun. Hugely honored that you had me on, and keep up the great work. These are great discussions you're having.
Thanks.